What do you think when you hear the name Sigmund Freud? If you're like most people, your mind might conjure up images of a man with a thick beard and an intense stare, someone who theorized that childhood sexual abuse could cause mental illness. But what many people don't know about the founder of psychoanalysis is that he was an atheist. Yep, that's right. Despite personally experiencing tragedy enough to shake anyone's faith, Freud never believed in God. So how did he get that way? Let's take a look at this in our latest video. Was Sigmund Freud a religious man? First off, let's clear something up. Freud didn't hate religion. He just didn't believe in it. In fact, in his later years, he even admitted that if he were to be reincarnated, he'd like to come back as a highly respected religious leader. It's not that he wanted to be a priest or anything like that. Instead, he said, "I should wish to be a great preacher, a religious leader, or an Old Testament prophet. Yes, if I had my life to live again, I would have become a preacher." While that seems a bit odd coming from a man who didn't believe in God, it makes sense if you consider that according to Freud, religion is simply a form of mental illness. He believed that people who were religious were mentally immature and unable to cope with the reality that there was no higher power watching over them. As a result, they created one. So why then did Freud not believe in God? Well, that's where things get a little more complicated. You see, Freud was born into a Jewish family in 1856 in what was then known as the Austrian Empire. Despite being raised in a traditional Jewish home, he didn't seem to be particularly religious. At the age of 4, he stopped believing in the God of his parents and began instead to believe in a kind of deistic God. This new God wasn't involved in human affairs and didn't care whether people prayed to him or not. To young Sigmund, God was simply a force of nature. When he was 6, he wrote a story about a boy who accidentally kills his sister with a hatchet. And when his father read it, he asked Sigmund what he thought would happen to the boy. "He'll go to hell," said Sigmund. But, asked his dad, if God isn't all-powerful, how can he prevent it? And that's when Sigmund stopped believing in God altogether. As a teenager, he became interested in science and philosophy and eventually went on to study medicine at the University of Vienna. It was there that he developed his theories on psychoanalysis, which he believed could help people unlock the mysteries of their own minds. Though some of his ideas were controversial, to say the least, Freud never wavered in his atheism. Despite never believing in God, Freud was deeply affected by the tragedies that befell him and his family. He experienced his fair share of personal loss and suffering, but none of it shook his disbelief in a higher power. So what exactly did he lose? Well, a lot. Let's take a look at some of the biggest blows to poor Sigmund. Freud's sons. Like most parents, Freud loved his children more than anything in the world, so it's no surprise that when 2 of them were sent off to fight in World War I, he was beside himself with worry. His oldest son, who was an artillery officer, was wounded twice during the war, and his youngest, who was serving as a medic, was killed in action. Needless to say, this experience took a toll on Freud, who wrote to a friend, "Never has the saying, 'the father can do nothing with the bullet,' been truer than now." Even before his youngest son was killed, Freud had already begun to feel the effects of the war on his mental health. In a letter to another friend, he wrote, "I cannot tell you how my nerves are being worn away by these worries. I am on the very verge of a complete nervous breakdown." When his youngest son was killed, Freud was devastated. He wrote, "If I could only tell you what a heavy blow this has dealt me, you would understand what it means. I am so utterly desolate that I can hardly expect ever to get over it." Despite his grief, though, Freud never turned to God for help. Instead, he threw himself into his work, writing some of his most important papers on the psychology of religion in the aftermath of the war. Freud's daughter, Sophie. Unfortunately, the tragedies didn't end there for Freud. After the war, he lost his daughter Sophie to the flu epidemic. She was only 23 years old. Needless to say, This was a devastating blow to Freud, who had always been very close to his daughter. He wrote to a friend, "I have had a terrible blow to bear. My beloved child is dead. She succumbed to the Spanish influenza, which has been raging here for 3 weeks." Freud's grief over the loss of his daughter led him to become increasingly reclusive in his later years. He stopped seeing most of his patients and withdrew from public life altogether. However, he continued to write until his death in 1939. So what do we learn from all this? Well, it seems that no matter what tragedies we may face in life, we each cope in our own ways. For some, faith may be a source of comfort. For others, science or reason may offer more solace. And for some, like Freud, tragedy may simply be a catalyst for even deeper introspection and self-analysis. Ultimately, it's up to each individual to find what works best for them in times of grief and hardship. A quick note on the ending of this video. Freud died in London in 1939 after taking an overdose of the drug Nembutal, which he had acquired illegally. He was suffering from cancer of the jaw and had become increasingly depressed in the months leading up to his death. Some biographers have speculated that Freud may have taken his own life, but there is no definitive evidence to support this claim. Regardless, his death was a tragic end to the life of one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century. Freud's legacy. Love him or hate him, there's no denying that Sigmund Freud was one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century. His theories on psychoanalysis revolutionized the way we understand the human mind, and his ideas continue to be debated and discussed today. Whether you agree with his theories or not, there's no denying that Freud was a brilliant thinker, and his work has had a profound impact on our understanding of the human mind. But what did Freud's contemporaries think of him? Well, as it turns out, some of the most famous people of the day were actually huge fans of Freud's work. People like Albert Einstein, Thomas Mann, and Marie Curie were all admirers of Freud's work, and some of them even credited him with helping them through personal problems. However, not everyone was a fan. Religious leaders and conservative thinkers were quick to denounce Freud's theories as immoral and anti-family, and even some of Freud's admirers felt that he went too far in his critiques of religion. But despite the controversy, Freud's work stood the test of time, and he is remembered today as one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century. What do you think of Freud? Do you agree with his theories? Let us know in the comments below. And if you liked this video, please be sure to subscribe so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching.